Hello, business finance students. I know that you will see a lot of links in here, but what I want to tell you is that, do you see this? This is hidden from you, these two, because I felt these two are a kind of time consuming. Therefore, don't, therefore, it's not a lot of, although this, you see a lot of links here, but that doesn't mean that these are very time consuming. When you come to the bottom here, you see learn more, load more. When you click, you will see about more assignments. But the good thing is that this one is hidden also, the last one. Do you see? This one takes 50 minutes. I am hiding it. That means it is not required. Then there is another one which says about 2 hours and 15 minutes. I am hiding it. That means you are not doing this one also. Therefore, I want you to go through the links. Some of them are videos for 1 minute, some of them 2 minutes. I want to make a lecture about Chapter 8, and I felt if I go through this, you will learn significantly about Chapter 8 and about risk. There are 18 questions here, and I am going to click and answer and explain each one of the questions, and hopefully that will help you with, understanding this chapter, which is an important chapter in terms of risk, and because investors, financial managers should take a risk. How much risk you should take, and what is the expectations of return. The more risk you take, the more expectations of return you have. For example, when you buy a lottery ticket, you know that your chances are winning, let's say $500 million is very low. That's why you are not putting $1 million in it. You buy it for $1, Therefore, anytime, the expected return, is when, you have significant amount of, you expect a lot of significant amount of return, that should be proportionate with the risk you are taking and with the investment. Now I click here, and there are 18 questions in here. I am going to go through each one of them, and hopefully you will learn, a lot. Number one, which is calculated, number one is called realized return of return, and I'll tell you why this is realized rate of return. That means that the earnings of a company when are calculated. That means after 1 year, you see that your investment went up by 10%. That is what you actually happened, what you realized. At the beginning, you were expecting it goes up, your investment was supposed to go up. You were thinking it was going to go up by 15%. That was what you were expecting. That you were at first expecting, but that didn't happen. After 1 year, it went up only by 10%. That means that's what your realized return. That's called realized return because that's what actually happened as opposed to what you expected. And required rate of return is when you are requiring, when you give your money to the bank, and the bank tells you they want to give you 5%, they better to give you 5%. That is required. But realized is what you are going to realize. You don't know what's going to happen. After 1 year, you look and you see, oh, you made about 12%, Therefore, that's why it is called realized rate of return. Number two, the answer is expected. We already said expected. When investment returns in the future and, need estimated, the type of return is calculated. It's called expected. You are, hoping, you are expecting the bank to give you 5%. You do the calculation, you put $100. You say that, next year, 5% would be $105. Therefore, that's what you are expecting from the bank to give you. Number three, the answer is B. And I'll tell you what it means. It means that imagine that you want to, do some investment. For example, invest in stocks. You say that if the economy is good, 80%, your stock is going to go up by 10%. Do you see that? You say that maybe I give possibility of 80%, it will go up by 10%. However, you say that if things are not good, 15%, there is a possibility that your $100, loses 5%. Do you see that? That means when you invest 100, you buy stocks for $100. When you buy, let's say you buy the stocks of Amazon, and you give 80%, that in the next 1 year it goes up by 10%. However, you are not sure. You say if things go wrong, if the people don't go online, there is a 15%, your $100 loses 5% of it. That means it becomes your $100 becomes $95 because it lost, And also you say there is a possibility of 5% that your $100 go up by 125%, which means that would be $125. If you add this 80%, 15%, and 5%, the total will be 100%. That is the distribution probability, and these are the outcomes. Now, if you want to invest in the stocks of Amazon, which one of these should we accept? A smart manager, money manager, will come and say, let's put all of these together and see what would be the expected rate of return if I buy $100 worth of the stocks of Amazon. For that reason, the correct answer is this, and I click here, check my answer, and it gives you how to do the calculation. That is correct. What you do, you multiply, this one by this one. You add this one by this one, and this 5% by 20%. That means the way you can guess is that you are guessing that your rate of return should be 8.5%, considering all these three scenarios. Managers always do that, financial managers, which means if I invest $100 in stocks of Amazon today, most likely there is a good possibility that I get 8.5%, which means $108.50. These are what I am guessing. And let's not forget, this is not just about stocks of stock market. You are a financial manager. A financial manager thinks that, okay, or you are a businessman, I am going to open a restaurant. During the first year, 80%, I might get, 10% of my, investment. You are going to open a restaurant, which is $100,000 you put, and then 10%, you are going to, your 100,000 is going to give you 10%. Or you might lose in the first year of the 15%, you might lose 5% of 100,000 that you were expecting to make, for example, in 1 year by selling food and those things. Therefore, after doing all that calculation, you say most likely at the end of the year, I am going to make 8.5%, therefore the return would be, for example, $8,500. That's what you calculate the way of, therefore you give the possibilities, and this is number 4. In number 4, again, it is the same thing. You multiply these together, and you will find, and then you will find here is that one of these numbers, I think it is a negative 2% maybe. If that's the correct, after you do the calculation, that is that if you accept this project, you are going to lose 2%. Let me see if it was the correct. It was negative 2%, which means there was another stock, let's say stocks of Walmart, that based on my calculation, I feel I have $100 to invest. Should I invest it in Amazon or should I invest it in Walmart? The Walmart, based on my scenario or calculations, is going to, after 1 year, shows that I am going to lose 2% of $100. That means my money is going to be $98. However, if I put that money in Amazon, I am going to make $108.50. Therefore, I make the decision by going and by buying stocks of Amazon. As I said, as a financial manager, when you are a financial manager of a company, you have to make decisions. But let me tell you one example. One example, those of you who live in the area know about a bank which is in this area, which was called Summit Bank. There was another bank came and bought this Summit Bank. Its name is Burke and Herbert. Therefore, Burke and Herbert, actually, it was called, merger of equal sizes. That means these two companies were almost the same size. But imagine that the financial manager of Burke and Herbert wanted to buy the Summit Bank. And it had to come and, pay $100 million to Summit Bank. It went and did this scenario here and came and said 80% we can our money will go with 10% this, and did the calculation. Notice that by buying the Summit Bank, their investment will increase by 8.5%. We have another bank here in Moorfield that its name is Cape and Valley Bank. That's a good bank also. I am just giving it as an example. Therefore, the manager of Burke and Herbert said, if we invest in Burke and Herbert in Cape and Valley Bank, if we put $100 million, we are going to lose 2%. Therefore, after they compared these scenarios, they made the decision to go and buy the Summit Bank instead of, because this calculation showed that the expected rate of return, was 8.5% when they buy the Summit Bank. Therefore, the financial managers constantly have to make the decision where they have to invest, where they have to put their money, and which one is going to give you a better return. However, they have to take the risk into consideration that we are going to talk about it. That means that if the Summit Bank was a better deal, however, if it was an extremely risky deal, therefore the company Burke and Herbert might be better off to go with buying Cape and Valley Bank that shows at the beginning losing 2%. Therefore, expected rate of return is a great number, but you have to understand the risk that we are going to talk after we go further here with it. Diversifying a portfolio, what does that do? When you diversify a portfolio, you decrease on systematic risk. The answer is D, and I will tell you why the answer is D and what we mean by unsystematic risk. Systematic risk is a risk that is out of your hand, Systematic risk, let me tell you an example of systematic risk. Suppose suddenly you go and buy stocks of one company, and suddenly the president of the U.S. changes, and suppose now President Trump is the president, and it is good for cryptocurrencies and Bitcoins. Those people who bought Bitcoins, Bitcoins went up. Now, if suddenly something happens, there are elections, and let's say the government changes and Democrats come, suddenly the price of Bitcoin might drop because the Democrats might not like cryptocurrencies. Therefore, this is outside the hands of the financial manager, because it is decided by the system of government, by the United States. Suddenly, or let's say Donald Trump is going to say that he doesn't like, he already is saying that he doesn't like certain things or certain companies. When it says he doesn't like certain companies, then, those companies suddenly lose. The financial manager there cannot do anything because it is a part of the system. Unsystematic risk is the risk that usually in the hands of financial manager. Financial manager, sometimes imagine that the financial manager suddenly goes and buys a risky stocks, put the investment of the company, and because these companies regularly invest in different things, and therefore unsystematic when it is not forced to your organization by outside of the system that is out of your hands. Therefore, the managers have to be careful of two risks: one systematic risk, one unsystematic, both of them. A manager better think about who might be the president of the U.S. If that person becomes the president, what's going to happen to their company? Or, if the Democrats win, what's going to happen? If Republicans, let me tell you one thing will happen when Republicans, win the elections. They reduce the taxes to corporations, They say that, therefore, a financial manager should think about, okay, if they reduce the taxes, what would be the impact on our organization? Are we paying less taxes? Therefore, that is some type of, we call it a systematic risk. It is, comes from the system. However, I won't I have to, discuss about this one by one. Number 6, the answer is A, on systematic risk. Then we say risk associated with a specific asset. Therefore, this was not the government, as I said. Therefore, that is on systematic risk. Number 7, the risk associated with dispersion around expected return. Let me tell you what it means. That means that you want to buy $100 stocks of Amazon, and let's say you are expecting a 10% return, which means you are expecting your money next year, the stocks from, for example, $100 becomes $110. That is expected, return, 10%. Now, in 1 year, it goes to, you make 11%. In 1 year, you make 9%. Let's see how close they are. You were very good in guessing. That means for the past several years, sometimes it becomes 11%, sometimes becomes 9%. That means the deviation is very low. It's only $1 above the $10 or $1 below the $10, Therefore, that deviation is low. However, in another company, when you invest, imagine you invest in Tesla as well. If you put $100 in Tesla, and you are expecting it to go up by 10%, in 1 year, that means your $100 is going to be 110 next year. 1 year, you see your $100 becomes $180. The next day, you see your $100 becomes $20. That means in 1 year, $80 goes on it, on top of it, or $80 goes below. Therefore, in that case, you say that, in Tesla, the standard deviation is significantly high. That means it deviates significantly from that expected $10. It goes all the way to $180, or in another year, $180 drops to $20. Do you see how it varies? That means that it's the dispersion. That means dispersion. It goes way up or way down. That dispersion can be low. In case of Amazon, the dispersion was very low. You expected $10, it went $1 up or $1. Therefore, one thing you conclude and one thing you can say that, the dispersion in Amazon, the standard deviation is low in Amazon. That means it deviates low from what I expected. But Tesla has a huge standard deviation because they call it in the stock market, they call it yo-yo. You know what yo-yo is, because some stocks are yo-yo. They go way up and then suddenly they drop way down. In fact, Bitcoin has been like that. One time it became $80,000. Suddenly it dropped to $5,000. It came back to $90,000. It went back. That is a significant dispersion from the expected return. Therefore, we want you to know and learn. We will talk about beta as well. We go to number 8, risk associated with stock returns and value to the overall market. Number 8, the answer is beta coefficient. Beta coefficient that I will tell you exactly. Let's think about what it means. If I ask you, suppose, give me an example of a company that is similar to Walmart. You might say a company that is operating similar to Walmart maybe is not, let's say, Tesla, because they are way different in different industries, and therefore you will think and say maybe Target. I am sure many of you know what the company Target is, and you say that Target is a company that is similar to Walmart. That's correct. Somehow that's a good assumption. and I give you $1,000, and I ask you to go ahead and invest, and I tell you invest $100 of it in Walmart, $100 of it in Amazon, $100 of it in different companies. If you want to diversify this $1,000 I give you, and what you do is that you would say that you want to invest them maybe in a diversified portfolio. Maybe you look at, if let's instead of 10,000, I give you 30,000. If you want to diversify it in a portfolio that is very diversified, you take and put $1,000 of it in each of the Dow Jones Industrial Average. You are already familiar with that index, because these are 30 different companies, and one of them, each one of them is almost, maybe two or three of them are similar. But overall, if you have noticed, they are in different businesses. Mine is Amazon, for example. Another student has a company called Goldman Sachs. That is in finance company. Another student has JP Morgan. JP Morgan is a banking and finance. Another student, I think, has 3M. 3M is Minnesota Mining and Manufacturing. These are 3M. Therefore, another person has let's say Home Depot. Do you see these companies are in different businesses, are in different industries? Therefore, by putting your money in these $30,000 in 30 different companies, you are diversifying the money. The benefit of it is when you do that, if something, let's say COVID hits, for example. If COVID hits, for example, the companies that might lose money a little, which company lost a lot of money when COVID hit? Maybe McDonald's, because the people were scared to go out and eat outside. Which company made money? Maybe Amazon, or maybe the companies that sold computers, because the people had to stay home and buy computers and work from home. Do you see? Therefore, that Dow Jones is a diversified company. Now, the beta coefficient tells you which companies are similar to one another. Let's say beta, suppose, and if something happens to one company, other companies also most likely will happen to them as well. Let me tell you the story of when September 11 happened. When September 11 happened about in 2001, what happened was that significant number of companies lost their money. Which companies lost more? First of all, the companies that were in the business of airlines, because there were two airplanes, hit the World Trade Centers. Therefore, if you had invested $30,000 in 30 different airlines, you would have significantly lost significant amount of your money, And then other organizations that lost money were hotels, because the people were not very scared to travel anymore. Do you see that? Therefore, if you look at beta, means that how these companies react in regards to one another. For example, some companies, when the economy becomes bad, they do well. If the people lose their money, they do well. Let me give you an example. Dollar store, if people lose their jobs, what will happen to the stocks of dollar store? It will go up. And you all know why, because the people don't have money to go and, therefore to spend money in big, expensive stores, they go to dollar store. And then when the economy, is good, other stores, might make a lot of money. Luxury things that people have more money, they go and, spend their money maybe in, expensive, more expensive. There are more expensive, shopping places like the one that, Amazon bought, one of the, food. It is not, I forgot its name. But anyhow, they are, that's how beta tells you how the investment moves with another one. Therefore, the beta between Walmart and Target might be 1. The beta 1 means they exactly move together. If the stocks of Walmart goes up by 1%, let's say 10%, stocks of Target also goes up by 10% or 9%. If the stocks of Walmart drops by 10%, most likely stocks of Target also, drop by maybe 10% or 9%. They move together. However, some stocks move against one another. For example, one stock that is moving against, something, let me tell you, when the September 11 happened, stocks of the airlines dropped, then stocks of defense contractors increased, those who make bombs, because they thought maybe U.S. goes to war with other countries. Do you see that? Therefore, this is something that you might say that the beta of a company, let's say, when it is more than one, let's say the beta of a defense company might be moving in opposite of another company. Therefore, in that case, the beta is 2, for example, or 3. That means when, the stocks of one company moves, let's say, 10%, the other one might move 30%. Do you see that? Therefore, if they work against each other, and beta can be less than 1 as well, 0.5, 0.3, depending on which direction. But the beta of 1 means they move exactly like each other. And let me assure you that the beta of Dow Jones Industrial Average, the total beta, is not going to be 1 because all those companies are not in the same industry. They are not the same. All of them are not retail. They are not in, consumer, products, or they are not technology. They are different companies. They move in different directions, Therefore, it is something we want you to know about beta. We go to 9. And the 9 is, the correct answer is C. Returns have larger deviation from the average return. We talked about a standard deviation, that, when this standard deviation is large, we gave you example. If you remember, I gave you the example of Tesla as a company that has a large deviation. One time it goes up by 30%, one time it drops down by 30, 40%. Therefore, that's the answer. Number 10, the larger the beta coefficient, risk-adjusted returns are multiplied by the larger number. Therefore, we already talked enough about beta. Beta, we go to 11. An investor may reduce risk by selecting stocks with poorly correlated returns. Then we give just example of Dow Jones, because Dow Jones, that is already 30 stocks, and these stocks have different returns. They are not correlated. They are not. One of them, gives, a return of 7%. Another one gives you 2%. And these returns are not correlated, which means if suddenly technology companies go bankrupt, you look at the Dow Jones Industrial Average, only 2 or 3 of those 30 companies, will lose money. But the other ones, that might be banking, that might be manufacturing, that might be airlines, those companies are going to make money, Do you see? It is poorly correlated. They don't have any relation. They don't move all together with the same direction because of the same thing. Number 12. For a security to help diversify a portfolio should return that is negatively correlated. To diversify, for a security to diversify a portfolio should have a return that is negatively correlated, and I'll tell you what it means, is that some investors invest in stocks. Some investors invest in bonds. Stocks are when you want to be owner of a company. When you buy stocks of Walmart, that means you are the owner of Walmart. But you can be the creditor of Walmart as well. Creditor means the person that rather than becoming the owner of the Walmart, becomes the creditor. That means you are buying the bonds of Walmart. You can go to the stock market and buy bond market and buy bonds of Walmart. In that case, you are, therefore, when you buy stocks, some people who are close to retirement, let's say the person becomes 60 years old, goes and has $100,000 in his or retirement, he or she will go and put, let's say, $60,000 of it in stocks of a company and $40,000 of it in the bonds of the companies. Not the same company, but other companies. Because if the same company goes bankrupt, then, suddenly all the stocks of that and bonds of that might go because the company might not be able to pay the bonds. Therefore, the person goes and buys stocks of the company, 60%, and 40% of investment, that means 100,000, 40% of it, 40,000 puts in the bond market. Therefore, why does this person doing this? He or she is, trying to be risk averse, because usually when the stocks go up, the bonds usually drop. When the bonds go up, stocks usually drop. Therefore, this person is a cautious person because he or she would say, I am retiring and I'm not going to take a risk. What happens if the economy goes up, drops for the next 10, 15 years? If the stock market is going to go drop and things are going to go bad, at least I have my bond market. And those will go up and will give me some, income. Therefore, that's why it says should have return that negatively correlated. Usually, stocks are negatively correlated. I gave you another example that why two companies might be negatively correlated. Let's say defense companies, those who make bombs, these companies might be negatively correlated by another company that makes money in some businesses that when there is a peace and security, therefore they are negatively correlated. Therefore, the person who wants to, diversify his or portfolio, he or she tries to buy the assets of both companies. They are the ones that are, therefore we explained about it. Number 13. To measure risk, the capital asset model, number 13, the capital asset model has to check the beta because the beta is telling you, are they moving together? If I have $2,000, I am not going to buy the stocks of put $1,000 in Walmart, $1,000 in what is that called, in Target, because they have beta of 1. Beta of 1 means that they move up together, they drop down together. Therefore, if I want to, be a risk averse, I look to see what company has a different beta than the Walmart. If Walmart beta is 1, I get the other. Well, it means that with relation to this, another company has a beta of 3. That means if Walmart goes up by 10%, the other one goes up by 30%. If Walmart drops by 10%, the other one drops by 30%. Do you see? These two are correlated also. Let's not forget, because I told you when it goes up by 10%, the other one goes up by 10%, 30%. Do you see they are in one direction of going up? Therefore, these two can be together, can be risky also, because you are buying two things that are going up. One of them goes up by 10%, one of them goes up by 30%. And if they drop, one of them drops by 10%, another one drops by 30%. Therefore, the investment managers, sometimes they like to see the opposite. That means that to reduce risk, the person would say, I like to see if this one goes up by 10%, the other one, if drops down by 10%, these two will take care of each other, and the net effect is 0. But at the same time, as a business manager, as a financial manager, you usually don't want to have the effect of 0. Do you know why? Because if in one year you make 10%, and in another year you lose 10%, you you're not making many money. Therefore, you have to, the meaning of it is just to be in the safe side. Do not suddenly put all your eggs in one basket, Therefore, I gave you the best example of retiring people, even young people. Buy stocks, young people usually have a portfolio that is, let's say, 80%, 90% stocks and 10% bonds. As the person gets older and older, becomes, 60 years old, maybe 60% stocks, 40% bond. Maybe the person when becomes, 70 years old, maybe buy more bonds, because bonds are usually less risky than stocks. Therefore, the older person wants to have, let's say the person who is 80 wants to have 80% in bonds, 20% in stocks. Do you see that? Has the stocks, because this 80 years old likes to see a return. Stocks give you 10% return annually, and bonds usually give you 5%. If the person has $100,000 of investment, therefore he or she thinks that, okay, on average of these stocks and bonds, he will get or she will get as much as 6% return. 6% of $100,000 is $6,000 a year. That means $500 a month. Many of you might become financial advisor, financial planner. The people come to you, 80 years old comes to you and tells you, could you give me advice? I have, $100,000 in my retirement account. Can you help me with that? How would you do that? Therefore, that is a very important concept to understand all of these issues. Number 14, compute the rate of return. And this one would be 6%. And I'll tell you what will happen. One of them here is called the risk-free. Let's say you want to invest, and a person, $100, you have $100. You want to invest. And if you give your $100 and buy a risk-free investment, what is a risk-free investment? Some of you might think the bank saving account, which is somewhat correct. Saving account, you know that it's not risky. You put it in the bank and it gives you 2%. Do you see that? Therefore, it is not, that's called risk-free, but not 100% risk-free, because the banks, there has been cases where the banks went, bankrupt, although many banks are insured by FDIC, by Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. When you invest, put your money in the bank, usually it is, safe by the federal government has insurance of $200,000. The bank, buys that insurance, FDIC. Therefore, if the bank goes bankrupt, hopefully the federal government, that insurance, FDIC, will pay you up to $250,000. However, when we say risk-free, think about the bank might not be 100% secure, maybe 99.99% secure. What is very secure? When you give your money to the federal government, because the federal government, as we said, is in the past 200, 300 years, 400 years, 200 years, the federal government hasn't gone bankrupt. It has been there from the time of George Washington until now. And one good thing about federal government is that it has the power of taxation. Anytime it runs low in money, it can increase the taxes. Therefore, it's not just like companies that, suddenly go bankrupt. It has the power to go after the people, get their home, get their property by force or by whatever to pay its debt. Therefore, risk-free rate is when you give government bonds, the short-term government bonds. Why short-term government bonds are, more secure? We will talk in another chapter. Therefore, you have the option of going and giving your money to federal government and get 2% on it. And also, if you put it in the stock market is going to give you 7%. And then the asset trades on the market of the United States, and the beta is 0.08. Now, we want to see how much money you should expect to get on average. When we say market rate of return, think about the 30 stocks of Dow Jones. Together, on average, every year they go up, or some of them might go highly, significantly, some of them less. But on average, they go up by 7%. That's something, in real world is happening by 10%. But let's think about 7%. It goes up by 7%. You can put your money on the stocks, of Dow Jones Industrial Average, of all 30 of them, that will give you 7% on average. Or you can buy the bonds of the, federal government by 2%. However, this Dow Jones Industrial Average, let's say, has a beta of 0.8. If it has 0.8, if it was 0.1, it was 1, then most likely you would have gotten your 7% return, But because it is 0.8, that means most likely you won't get that 7%. Therefore, we have to see how we do the calculation. And I click here, check my work, and it gives you the formula. Look at here. It says that rate of margin, what you are going to get, what you have to expect to return is that RF means risk-free rate. Risk-free rate is 2%. Your expectation when you invest in the stock market is that you are telling that you could go and put your money in risk-free rate and get 2%. Therefore, this RF means 2%. But because you are putting your money in the stock market, you are expecting to get more than 2% because the stock market should give you more. If it is not, no reason for you to give your money to the stock, put it in the stocks. You will give it to the federal government. Therefore, they better to give you extra. This plus means extra money that the stocks are supposed to give you. RM means return of the market, which was 7%. 7% minus risk-free. 7% minus risk-free percent is 5%. Do you see? This is called market premium, that, the difference between what the market is giving you minus risk-free rate, 2% plus. 7% minus 2, as you see, 7 minus 2 is 5. 5% plus 2%, 7%, but the beta means that it is a kind of risk type of you are taking how it is moving with the movement of the market. That is 6%. Therefore, what you are requiring, what you are hoping by putting $100 in the stocks of some company, a specific company, therefore your expected rate of return is 6%. Therefore, that is called required rate of return when you are using capital asset pricing model. It's called CAPM, they call it. You will see this word again. Therefore, that is what you are going to do in terms of, investment, and how much. If you put $100, according to CAPM, you have to get 6% on top of that every year. That means you have to get $106. At the end of the year, you have to check to see whether that happened or not, because the beta is clear. You know what the beta is. We know what this rate of return of the Dow Jones is on average in the past 10 years. It is 7%. And we know what the risk-free rate is. I can go to the stock market, I can go to the Google and say, what is the risk-free rate? If you do that, you will see, go to ChatGPT and say, what is the risk-free rate on, they say that on treasury notes, their treasury bills, they call it. The treasury bills are the ones that, they mature. That means you give your money to federal government in less than 1 year or 6 months. The federal government returns your money and it gives you 2% more. That's a risk-free rate. Therefore, we already have this one. We already know what the market return of Dow Jones on average is. And we already know the beta, then your expected rate of return is 6%. Therefore, if it is 6%, you as a financial manager know where you put the money of the company. Should I go and buy stocks of Dow Jones, or should I go and buy Summit Bank? Summit Bank is going to give me 8% with the same, risk. Therefore, I'll go and buy the Summit Bank as a Berkshire Hathaway bank. Why should I put my money, investment $100 million in the stocks of Dow Jones? Therefore, as a financial manager, you have to know, you have to understand that which project is a better project for the money with the lowest risk. Risk is also plays a role in capital asset pricing model. All else equal, as beta increases, capital asset all require. When beta increases, you're expected, you want the required return to increase. Therefore, that is showing that, if they are correlated, if one of them, suppose one company gives you 10%, 30% each time stocks of Walmart goes up by 10%, therefore the beta is 3 times more. Because the beta is 3 times more, if let's say Walmart expectation goes up by 10%, you are expecting the other one, which was 30%, to go up by 30%. Therefore, that increase. Number 16. A smaller beta is better when a smaller required return of capital asset model is that you are expecting a smaller beta value. Number 17. All following statements are equal and decreases. This is a social issue. You all have heard, I don't know how many of you are following, what Donald Trump is trying to achieve in Washington, D.C. Those of you who follow politics, and yesterday Elon Musk was at the White House with his baby, with his son. I don't know if any of you have seen it. If you go, I highly recommend go to the internet and click Elon Musk White House, and you see the news. His son is sitting on his shoulder next to the, in the Oval Office, and he's talking about shutting down a company called USAID. USAID is a company, is an organization, government agency that helps other countries. Has a budget. Has maybe 10,000 employees across the world in the U.S. And these people go and fight with diseases. And if there is an earthquake or something like American Red Cross, they go and help. And this organization has been there for almost 50 years, from the time when Kennedy was, at the White House. He created, this organization. Donald Trump came and said we shouldn't do that. It is a waste. We should close it. And also he came with the idea that said that the universities, for example, or government organizations shouldn't have DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Therefore, as a financial manager, as a manager of organization, you should know what it is. He said we should shut down this concept. We will ask you a question maybe in the future weeks to see what you think about these issues, because they have impact on finance, DEI, diversity means that in companies always, they said that let's hire sometimes minorities, inclusion and diversity, equity, make sure, they call, and then now the concept is, they are trying to change it. Companies also paid a lot of attention to DEI. And then they had an organization, let's say Google, Facebook, and they are somewhat shutting down this section of, this section. Is it good or bad? We will discuss it in another session. But for now, to answer this question that says that, is it good for the companies to be, to think about environment, because sometimes companies don't care. They dump their trash in the environment. One thing happened a few years ago. Some of you might, I don't think, some of you might remember. One of the companies dumped a lot of the trash in the river in Charleston. And then they had to clean it up. And, sometimes they say that what happens, should the companies pay attention to environment and social issues that we said DEI might be an example? And if they do, are they going to lose more money or less money? The answer is decrease. Is it, the following statement is true. That means it can work for environment. It is good for the environment when the companies pay attention to the environment. Is a part of triple bottom line. You know what this means? This means if they pay attention to environment and social issues, it helps their bottom line, right? Which means it helps them with their profitability. Now, the concept is being a little bit challenged these days from the time that, Donald Trump, took over the office, and these issues are being reevaluated. Therefore, and also works with social issues and helps minorities. However, the companies who don't pay attention to this will decrease their bottom line. That means that they lose money when they don't pay attention to environment. This is more of a social, issue. Financial managers should be careful, should understand the social issues. It's a good question. And that's why, I click here, we go to the 18. The 18 is the same. The answer is D. A company makes an edict that will cut emissions by 50%. It's a good idea. Therefore, if the company wants to, help with the lowering the, air pollution, why not? Which of the following line in environment, social, business decisions being made? This is what they made. Is a great idea. I know that it was a long, lecture, but I want you to pay a lot of attention to what I said. I will leave these questions and I want you to learn. Maybe I give you one exam one time from these questions. I want you to learn about it. And if you have any questions, let me know.